Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. This is our third Any Camera Will Do Filmmakers talk, so thank you very much. We'll start with thank you to the people who are helping us make this happen. So Jackson Speed, Create Engage, and Tavsa. Without those guys, we couldn't do this, so thank you very much to them. Welcome to everyone on the live stream. Thank you very much for joining us online. And also thank you very much to our supporters. We got a bunch of support from some really kick-ass industry supporters, people who help filmmakers all over Australia. So Lemac, Rode Microphones, Film Inc. and Mango Tree Story. They're the people who help us keep going, and they also give us a bunch of cool stuff to give away, which we'll be giving away throughout the night. We'll dive straight into it. So we're going to start with Observance. We'll throw the trailer up, and then we'll start talking. Oh, and if you have empty plates, put them on the bar.
So who are you spying on?
A woman.
Don't think it's a little too soon for you?
It's only for a few days.
Is there something I should be looking out for?
Just watch.
You tell me, what am I supposed to do if he harms her?
Don't worry, that's not your problem.
You should leave.
What?
You don't understand.
Stop watching.
His job's not what you're saying it is. I want to speak to the client.
The client doesn't want to be contacted.
I think you've been lying to me.
Why does it have to be her?
What am I supposed to do?
Continue watching.
All right, that's pretty creepy. We've got Joseph Sims-Dennett and Josh Zammit, the writer-producer and the writer-director of Observance, to chat to you about this amazing film.
Thanks for saying it was creepy.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
How are we? What happens now?
Do we?
Tell us how did this film happen? How did you guys get this film going? And because where are you guys at the moment? You've made...
Well, we're releasing this at the moment, but generally the film came from me and Josh getting fired from our jobs. So we had a bit of free time. Yeah, and so that was a long time ago. That was November 2012. We lost our jobs, and in that sort of dark place, we decided that we were going to write a film together. We just started wandering the streets at night, and you know, in Roselle, where we were living at the time and where we shot the film, and yeah, just started kind of. It was almost like therapy, just like coming up with this. This story that was sort of more or less a metaphor of how we felt about our lives at that point in time. And yeah, it sort of came about like that. And then we shot it in January 2013, so it was ages ago. And we did it in 11 days, and all in our apartment. It was like 17-hour days. It was a heat wave, like massive heat wave. Like, I think it was past 50 degrees in our apartment. And of course, we set the movie in winter, and so it was a bit shit, but I think, you know, that sort of experience sort of translated into the actual film itself, and made it a lot more meaningful. Really did capture how we felt about our lives at that point in time, and then it was just a good couple of years of finishing it, and a year of cutting the film, and then doing the sound and color grade, which all because we didn't have any money. We made the film for about $10,000, just slowly putting it together and calling on favors and then once it was done, submitting to festivals and waiting for the right one to come along, and then it all premiered last July in Montreal. We haven't shown it in Australia yet, but we're getting distributed by Umbrella Entertainment, and it's coming out in April now. So that's the entire story. But that's generally at the moment. What do you reckon, Josh?
I agree with him.
He agrees with me. Thanks, Josh.
Tell us again, how much did this film cost to make?
About 10 grand, bit more now. Like making a film, like it's tough, as a lot of people I'm sure would know. But it's a pretty simple process, and it's doable. We did have the time on our side. We didn't have investors. It was just my credit card, so it was just the bank really being like, pay your fucking credit card. And me just putting more money on it. But I think it was just, us taking our time and making sure that it was all done correctly, because we didn't have any money, but we did have as much time as we really needed. So we just pushed everything, as far as we could, and then, wrapped up the cut, and then the sound, and then finally the grade. It's just the hard part really is, as a lot of filmmakers are starting to know, as more people are making these sorts of films, is when you have to deliver them, which is, paying lawyers and paying for E&O insurance and deliverables and all this sort of shit. Suddenly you're just like, well, I've made a film for $10,000. I've nearly died of hunger. We've all done it. Isn't that great? And then they're just like, yeah, well, if you want to release it, you have to, somehow find 50 fucking grand to pay a lawyer. That was the difficult part, but fortunately for us, Screen Australia has come in and supported the film with completion funds, which has really saved my life. Now we're being distributed in North America and Australia and a few other territories as well in the coming months, which is good.
Excellent. Now, is that 10 grand, was that just repairing someone's apartment? Because it looks like wherever you shot got trashed.
Yeah, it was our apartment.
We cleaned it ourselves.
Yeah, with turpentine. So it was like we had to make it look really crap, and there was just all this like we had to make it look like there was a lot of mold on the walls. Josh was the production designer, so it was all his fault.
Yeah.
And another person's fault who made it a lot worse. Ended up using acrylic paint and just like spraying it out of a bottle.
That was my fault. I did that.
That was his fault that we spent 6 months cleaning that shit up. Because it was one of those apartments, these old buildings where the walls are just twice as high as this room, and somehow someone just climbed and ended up spraying it all over the ceiling. And I'm like, did we even film that? And so it was just 6 months of us. We ended up just getting turpentine, didn't we?
For about
poisoning ourselves.
2.5 weeks, we just scrubbed walls every evening. And every morning we would wake up with black eyes.
Yeah.
So that was that.
Yeah. So that was fun. And it was just this never-ending thing of just like, we shot the film in 11 days, but it did take about, September when we moved out. We shot it in January, September when we moved out of just cleaning as much as we could. Anyway, so that's how we cleaned our apartment.
So talk us through the actual production. Talk us through how you guys got this thing from script to the first day of shooting, and talk us through that 11 days. How do you spend 10 grand and end up with a feature film?
Favors.
Yeah.
Just pulled every favor. Everyone I went to film school with came on and helped for free. Basically, we just didn't pay anyone.
We literally didn't pay
and we got a
single
good deal
person.
with the camera. I got all of the props from my grandfather's garage. It was guerrilla filmmaking. That's how we did it. It's not, we somehow pulled it off to look like it was legit, but it really wasn't.
No, it wasn't. No. Yeah, it was, and it happened so fast as well. Like, we didn't have an AD. So I think so. We wrote the film in November, and we had another DP attached to the film, but you know, everyone sort of gets flaky when they're not getting paid, so we dropped out. I think it was like the week before Christmas, and we were due to start shooting on the 2nd of January. And we called Rodrigo Vidal Dawson, our DP, and then through him we ended up contacting Warren at VA, and then like I think a day later we had the Alexa and $500,000 worth of equipment just sitting in our apartment, and I'm like, oh fuck, I have to do it now. And yeah, and it was literally just like me calling and harassing people on Christmas Day, being like, so how do you feel about this? You're going to come on board, costume designers, special effects, makeup, all that sort of stuff, and just putting it together with casting. It did end up overlapping. I don't think Tom, I think, had been cast before. Like Lindsay, the lead actor, he was sort of part of it before we even started writing the script, because I always knew that I wanted to make a film with him. Like I'd worked with him before, and he's a very good friend of mine, and I wanted to do a movie with him, and a lot of it, getting it done in the 11 days was down to him as well. It sort of ended up being, if when you sort of go, oh, okay, we're in the kitchen today, we're going to shoot all the kitchen scenes, and so I'd kind of just like pick a lens, maybe like wider lens or something, and he would sort of walk in, do the scene, walk out, we'd continue rolling, he'd change his costume, and then walk in and do another scene at the other end of the film, and do all of that stuff, and no one else would have been able to do that other than Lindsay, which was the extraordinary thing about it. And so yeah, we've got a lot to thank him for, but also just there not being an AD. Like I ended up scheduling half the shoot before we started shooting, and I was just like, and I sort of ran out of time, and I was just like, okay, well, I'll schedule the rest of the film in the evenings, like and the second half of the shoot. And we ended up just doing these like 18-hour days, and then when it was done, it was just like all the other shit that everyone leaving, and then I'd get about an hour and a half sleep, and so we just didn't get any more of the schedule done, and so it ended up just being like everyone rocking up and me just being like, okay, rock up. And I remember like scheduling in the hour and a half sleep, I remember just being like, all you need to do is just think of what the first setup is. And then when they knock on the door and come into the apartment, be like, yep, it's this one here. Just tell everyone. Then I'd go and have a shower, and then I have to think of the next one. It was just this like enormous fuck up like that. But it was, that sort of madness, I think, is what made the film. I don't know, that extreme heat as well that we were all going through, that delirium that was there on the set. I really do feel translated into the film, and it was sort of captured in this really interesting way. So I don't really regret it, but it was a pretty rubbish experience. But that's how more or less the shoot came together. It was just kind of cobbled together at 1,000 miles an hour. Yeah.
Cool. Now, do you want to just sort of give everyone a bit of an insight as sort of what the plot, like tell us a bit about what the film's about.
Things about, yeah.
Because the trailer looks super creepy and looks very atmospheric.
So the film is about a private investigator who has been hired to follow a woman, and he doesn't know who she is and why he's following her, and he doesn't know who his employer is. It's just this anonymous person who's paying him a lot of money to do it. And as he's watching her, he's starting to realize that he might be being used for this ulterior motive, is generally all I'm allowed to say without giving everything away.
And tell me about the writing process. How long did you guys take to write it? Like, talk us through that process.
I think it was about 2 months, and it basically was just me and Joseph talking in the evenings up until like 4 a.m., walking around, kind of just losing our minds, trying to spew out any sort of deep depression and turn that into a story. I think we did it.
It's really appealing, isn't it?
It's the truth.
It's the truth. Well, yeah. Well, Josh had one of those tape recorder things, And so, because we
Sound like psychopaths.
we are. We had one of those tape recorder things, and so because we made the film in Roselle. I don't know if you guys know the area well, but there's that mental asylum in Lilyfield. It's abandoned. And we would just walk there at night and like break into the buildings and sort of just have a chat. And yeah, it was more so like this therapy period, and we would just record ourselves and then sort of listen to it the next day, and just it was strange, but we ended up sort of, you know, all of that was sort of feeding into this script. Like we generally, even now, I was just saying before, you know, even now we sort of only find that we can write at nighttime. Like daytime is more so for editing and that sort of stuff. But, you know, when everyone buggers off and goes to bed, that's when we sort of felt like we are able to write better. And so it was the same with Observance, the writing process there.
So finishing writing, which took you 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
which is mildly depressing for our writing efforts. But finishing writing, how long until you actually were shooting? Like
Directly after.
We even were doing, well, you know, you often do rewrites during a shoot. But yeah, we hadn't really finished the film until during the script, until during the principal photography period.
We rewrote the end scene one evening.
It was the day before we shot it.
Before we shot it. And we fell asleep, and it was like written on a napkin. And
Yeah.
We couldn't find it or something. It was like...
Because the whole apartment was sort of taken over, so we had mattresses up against the wall, so you just sort of pull a mattress down and fall on it, and you'd sort of wake up a couple of hours later. And so we were doing that, and I remember, yeah, we were writing the last scene on a napkin, because it was all we could really find. And then we both fell asleep. And then gave a napkin to the lead actress the day after and said, "This is what's going to happen now."
Okay,
We're
that's
professionals.
Yeah.
And how big was your crew? Talk us through that.
I don't know.
15 people?
Maybe a bit less on some days. We had to be really careful because we weren't paying anyone. So when we were shooting over in the apartment opposite, because we got the lady to let us use her apartment somehow for 2 days. So we had this sort of 2-day period. For some reason, I scheduled it right at the beginning of the shoot, which was really silly because we had so much to do. And so in those first 2 days, they were just gigantic days, and it was just so traumatic doing that because it was like the middle of the night, and there's like this domestic violence scene that we're shooting, and they are screaming, and it's like 3 a.m, and the cops are coming and stuff, and it was just horrible, and we're all just sat on the street watching it, just being like, "Yep, got that scene," but I can't even remember what your question was. Oh, sorry, yeah, we needed more crew for those days, just like moving furniture around, that kind of stuff. But then otherwise, it was just, I think maybe 3 or 4 people in camera department, and then Josh and Nicole, and that was it. And Alice for costumes and that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was pretty minimal. But we wouldn't have needed much like a bigger crew. I always sort of find anyway with crews, I don't really like it when there's 100 people there because you just like everything just gets very slow, and I don't know who anyone is. But yeah, I think we sort of got through on the right amount of people on that one, and that was a lot down to Josh, who did most of the crewing. We did get that one right, I think.
And talk me through, how do you direct people in stinking heat and with something that seems, sort of fringe emotional?
God, I don't know. I remember, like, with Lindsay, like, I know him really well and how he works, so I can be a really bad director and be like, "Lindsay, just bring it down a little bit, then I'd say it the next take, and then we get it." I mean, really, we only had 2 takes max. Most of it was just one. Like, Charles wanted to shoot us, editor. But yeah, with all the stuff over in the apartment opposite, because there's a lot of point of view stuff that you would have seen in the trailer. That was mostly done just by walkie-talkie, sort of just set up like a walkie-talkie system up, so it was on like a loudspeaker in the apartment, and me just being like, run to the window, and then they ran to the window, and just that sort of stuff. But I think like with Steph, it was much more of like just talking through how the character was feeling, that sort of stuff, and how she sort of moved around the set. Generally, the way I work with actors, I don't really like to give them too much anyway. I'm just like, so this is where the scene's happening, and then they kind of just show me how they kind of would do it, interpret it, and then we kind of just build from there, rather than me having this preconceived idea of like moving around and particular shots. Most of it was done through, particularly with the language of how we decided to shoot the film, like the rules that we set up for the camera, with his perspective being very restricted with hers. And because she's like, he's watching her through windows essentially, so we can't see the full picture of what she's doing. We felt it should be the same for the audience watching him. So generally what I did was Lindsay would come onto the set, we'd sort of block the scene and figure out what was happening, and then I would sort of pick the lens and have usually something that was much more closer, and focus on one specific small part of the scene, and the character would be sort of moving in and out of frame, so our view of the of what the character was doing was constantly restricted, and you wouldn't be seeing everything that he was doing. So that sort of forced perspective of what was actually happening kind of found its way in terms of actually shooting it. It sort of just meant that, because I only really had time to do one shot of each scene, like I was lucky if I had two, it sort of worked out kind of well with that, and having actors that I trusted, it was more or less okay achieving it. There were some nightmares in the edit, but we figured it out.
So you've come to the end of your 11 days of shooting, and you're diving into the edit. What do you do? Like, are you talking to distributors before you finished editing this film? How did you guys get out there, get noticed?
I didn't want anyone to know about the film until it was ready. So, like, I'd made a film a few years before, one that I didn't like very much. I was very young when I made it, and then coming to Sydney and doing TVCs, sort of like, it was a little bit soul destroying, mainly just because you have this dream of being a filmmaker, which I'm sure a lot of people in this room have. And when you're just like, absolutely, you're sort of just like, well, my future is about, fighting for KFC ads. And you kind of just see how other people around you, because we're working for this company, and how they sort of felt about their lives and how it all worked for them. It wasn't, I knew it was something that wasn't going to make me very happy. And so it was on purpose. It was just, okay, I'm going to just leave this life and make a film and finish it in my own time. And I think it was more or less the same with you as well. And just, we'll finish it, and when it's ready, it's ready. But we just needed to be normal people for a while and just get a normal job and, be able to afford a frickin' steak at the end of the week and a beer. And because it had just been so shit for so long. And yeah, we were just like, okay, we'll finish the film. And when that was done, it was just about reaching out to festival programmers. I mean, with the whole festival thing, it's like this whole big thing with, with features and short films of just like spending thousands of dollars on Without a Box or Film Freeway or something. And like I've known festival programmers before, and how a lot of the time it is a bunch of rubbish. Like some festivals genuinely do sort of seek to discover films that way, but mostly it is just like, give us your money and an intern might watch the first 5 seconds. And so it was just me emailing a lot of programmers and trying to get them excited about the film. And we had some offers, but it was really with Fantasia when Mitch Davis, the director of that festival, he told us that we'd got in, and we were just like, well, this is the perfect place to debut the film, just because of the amount of industry as well as press that attend the festival. Like, it's a fan-driven festival, and it's being watched by people who have a genuine enthusiasm for film, rather than it being more of like a generalist festival where it's just a lot of, you know, posh people going to watch art. And then they'd say they're not very nice things. But yeah, and with Fantasia being like a discovery festival and having that platform, it really did work well for us. Like, we knew that we'd get a review in like the Hollywood Reporter and that sort of stuff, and it took off from there. But it was during that process that, yeah, we this was a wrong decision that I made. But when we had found out that we got into Fantasia, I went out to a whole bunch of sales agents, which I shouldn't. I should have reached out to them and been like, "Hey, we're playing at this festival," but I sent screeners out, and I ended up signing with someone too early in the process, which I don't think was the right thing to do for the film. So no one do that. It's a really silly thing to do. So you wait for your premiere and then you talk to people. But it sort of that happened, and then Umbrella approached us when I came back to Australia, and then from that, like, we got into London Film Festival, which was massive, and then from there, that's when it really did sort of build, and we made a few sales, and the sales agent made a few sales, and and it kind of just, that's how it more or less happened.
Excellent. All right, we're going to open up the floor to some Q&A. And so if anyone's got some questions, throw your hand up. And if you have a good question, you could even win some amazing stuff from our amazing sponsors. So who wants to ask a question? So where people put their hands up. Woo, over here.
Hi, again. What was your biggest challenge for the entire process, and how did you overcome it?
Biggest challenge? Really the biggest challenge was that very end bit. I mean, it was really tough all along, but the end bit with, you sign with a sales agent and people are just like, yeah, we want to release your film. And you're like, that's really good, but I can't afford the deliverables and all those sorts of components to actually deliver the film so that, someone can actually release it. The whole like bureaucracy thing in the way. And so that was really hard, because if I didn't live in Australia, where Screen Australia did make the decision to come in and support the film would literally just be kind of nowhere. It would have it would have had all of this sort of like enthusiasm and people saying that people want to release it, but we would have just been fucked essentially. And I think that's a really sad thing for a lot of other films. Like I've seen a lot of these films along the way, and I talk to these filmmakers, and some of them are like genuine like mini masterpieces. Like they're incredible films, and it's just like, and you can't release it. You just because of that reason, it's like disgusting. And it's just really sad, because it just sort of shows that, film is just, some business thing. It's not necessarily like an art form and about audiences and, that sort of experience. And so that was the biggest challenge, and overcoming it was, spending 2 months filling out bits of paper and submitting to Screen Australia.
Who's next?
How long is the film? So how many pages were you filming a day?
It was 82 minutes, just under 83 minutes, I think. Yeah. Is that what you asked?
Yeah, and how many characters are in it? Is it mostly just him?
It's mostly just him and her, yeah.
There's like 5 characters.
I think there's 5 characters. There's like other characters that are just like voice parts, but like people who call him, or he calls. So maybe there's like 10 all up. But really, yeah, there's just... most of the film is him by himself.
So did that make it... I guess that would have made it faster to shoot then, right? Because you didn't have to get reverses on every...
Yeah, absolutely. It made it so much easier. If it had been 2 characters... Strange to actually think of it in that way. But if it had been 2 characters, it would have been a bit of a nightmare. Well, I mean, we did... we did do stuff with like Benedict Hardy. He plays a character called Charlie, who's Parker's brother-in-law, and he comes into the apartment, and that was shot. I think that was shot in like a half day or something, and it was a pretty long scene. But I think that was mainly done through because it was using a lot of the apartment, and we just needed to shoot it all. So we did like one handheld kind of thing where, you know, you just sort of grab that shot, he walks in, and then you just keep rolling and run up the stairs and get the next sort of setup, and it just, you know, that sort of momentum through just shooting it all through one take. And then I think I just did a couple more establishing ones, but that was a little bit easier. Like, one of the harder things with this was because all the crew were in the apartment as well, and so all the gear, you know, all these big boxes of all this sort of shit, and so we're constantly moving it all over the place. But with that one, everyone just moved out. Even I wasn't in the apartment for it, so I just reviewed the takes after, and I kind of just like, well, yeah, well, I think we've got it now, and we had to just quickly move on. But yeah, that's more or less, yeah, how it went. But I think that wasn't too bad, but it would have been a nightmare, yeah, if it had been two characters in the apartment. This is interesting music. We would have been able to get a better deal.
Don't say too much, man.
I don't know, I'm being filmed, so I can't really say too much. So you can come and chat to me afterwards. That's genuinely my answer.
Over there.
I have a pretty loud voice. That's right. Okay. Thanks. So where are you guys going from here? Like, what are you up to next?
We after we shot this film all those years ago, 2013, there's a film that I've been working on called Cry of the Hunters, and it's a little bit of a delicate story because it's based on actual events. So all these people are still alive. Really interesting story about a lady who was murdered, and they said it was an exorcism, and then so they all walked free. We wrote that script after we had finished. So we gave the film to our editor, and he sort of went and, in his spare time, did his sort of first pass of the edit. And during that time, Josh and I just started writing another script because we just needed to get out of the Observance world, because it was the shoot was just so traumatic, and coming out of it, I felt like I'd just compromised so much, like it was just this mega fuck up that I'd destroyed my life for no reason for. And then like 2 years of like, you know, finding it again. But during that immediate period afterwards, we write that. And then last year when it premiered, sort of, you know, when you go to Hollywood and have a million meetings with really enthusiastic people who are lying to your face. And I had sort of gone in with like a satire script, which was probably really stupid, but considering I just made a surrealist horror film. But yeah, we ended up, like at London Film Festival, we ended up returning to this script, Cry of the Hunters, after I saw The Witch and The Lobster, and was just like, oh, I feel like this is, especially with you know, a lot of the like political debate over, you know, like what was happening in Germany, because I was in Germany for a bit, you know, about asylum seekers and that sort of thing, and how, you know, the behaviour and how, you know, communities are just completely throwing out any kind of moral stand or values that they had, and that was something that I sort of related straight back to Cry of the Hunters, because it's just so incredibly relevant. So we're actually working on that now, and we have a really good producer on board who did The Babadook, and yeah, we're sort of just working into doing that, and hopefully we'll be shooting that in the second half of this year. But for now, my days are spent calling my distributor and sales agent trying to get them to release this film. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. Josh is shooting a short film.
Yes, I'm shooting a short film called Ascendant, and I got a script called Cedar that I hope to shoot soon. That's me.
That's Josh.
Well, first up, it's not often you hear an Australian filmmaker say, "Thank God I was in Australia."
Yeah, I didn't say that before, did I? And then they gave me money and I shut up.
You guys said it's like this whole thing was shot in your apartment at the time. When you first started coming up with the story idea and the script, was the fact that you had that apartment to shoot in like influencing your decisions on making the script? Did you start from there and then work your way out?
Yeah, I think so. I remember it was like it sort of came as like a weird dream thing originally. You know, like when you're falling asleep and you're like, oh, that's a really fucking good idea for a film. And you wake up and write it down, and then you wake up in the morning, you're like, that was terrible. I was just like, well, I'm not doing that. And then I woke up in the morning and I remembered it, and I spoke to Josh about it. And literally that evening, we just started, talking about it more and started writing it. And it grew from there because it was in our apartment. Even with like some of the scenes, one of the scenes I sort of covered myself in plastic and ran at Josh and he filmed it, which is one of the biggest scenes in the film. Just like weird shit like that, just kind of like fooling around and coming up with ideas. So yeah, it did really help us being in this. It was kind of a nice apartment before we fucked it, but like being in the location where we knew that we were going to film it. Yeah, it really did help.
After the chaos of production, what was post like?
Post?
Yeah, what was it a matter of unraveling or reworking or?
It was a reworking.
It wasn't too much of a reworking, I don't think.
I think it was.
I think that we took some of the bigger stuff out that we knew that that we couldn't really achieve, and at the end of the day, those kinds of things didn't really matter as well. It was just finding something else and finding the meaning in those scenes in a different way. And so, like, a lot of it was just like you are right in that we did find this film in post-production through the editing process, and that's why we fought so hard to get Charles Ivory, who we worked with when we worked in TV season. Like, in my view, he's one of the best editors in the country, and it's just good that he's starting to move into long-form stuff, and I wish he'd do more, but he's got mortgage, and so TVCs pay a bit better. But he was absolutely integral in going down that path of kind of like finding the film and weaving it all together, and just like finding a shot at that end of the film and moving it here and that kind of stuff, and kind of plotting the whole thing that way, and really it was more so like long discussions about the mythology behind the film, behind the story, and what was actually happening to him, and dropping small clues, and figuring all that out. And that was where Charles was really invaluable. It was just those conversations that happened with the actors on set and with Josh. It sort of just grew from there, and we did spend like an entire year cutting it, but it was mainly because it was just done, whenever he could spare a few days here and there to sit with us and actually do it. And we just pushed it until we knew that it had sort of reached its limit, and that the film was what we like. It became it wasn't just like we had this idea in November 2012 when we got fired, and then we achieved that. It was this entire journey, like almost creating our own hell to live in and experience, and it was so much bigger than just a film. We kind of did just find it in that post-production period with Charles, and just translating that experience into the final film. No, I wouldn't.
We don't recommend you make a film like Observance.
I think like there was something like I'm happy. Like I'm not happy. Well, I'm happy with the achievement of it, and that our pain. It's such a freaking first world problem kind of bullshit thing. But I'm happy that our pain sort of did translate into something that really did, we watched the film and we're just like, yeah, that's how we felt about our lives at that point in time. That's really relevant to us and really meaningful to us, which is what I think films should be. It's just like touching on another person's point of view of the world. But yeah, it was just so long and so unorganized and uncertain that, it really was a struggle sometimes to be like, shall I just throw this away and get on with my life? But yeah, we all sort of did just stick by. We had good people in our lives that were pushing us along and supporting us, so it was good in the end. But no, I wouldn't make another film like that personally. But yeah, if you want to ruin your life, go for it.
All right, well, before we take a break, I'm going to ask you one last question, which is, how did you get fired?
We really can't say. We really can't. I don't know. Up to you, Josh.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Thank you for coming again. But we're going to take a 10-minute break. If you get drinks at the bar, you'll get a raffle ticket, and we've got miles of stuff to give away. So make sure you get your raffle tickets. To the people online, we'll be back, in 10 minutes, and then we'll have Arrowhead and Jesse O'Brien to talk it through. Thank you very much.
I don't think any of us really knew what Observance was going to become. We sort of set up with the objective to make a horror film, and no one really could have anticipated how that would shift.
Well, I'm very aware that I'm just one sort of cog in the mechanics of the film making, and that always is about finding an idea and telling a story. But something about this project is that it kind of felt like it extended beyond just storytelling.
I mean, Joseph made it clear from the start that he wanted us to look inside ourselves for the source of fear, not to use cheap, gimmicks and things like that. We all did have to sort of confront something, I suppose, in ourselves. But also just the experience of shooting fed a lot into the sort of anxiety, I think, that reads.
It was interesting too, as it moved on, and we were switching so that we were originally shooting in day and then kind of tail ending it so that we could shoot the night the next time, and a lot of us were also sleeping in that environment. You kind of lost track of time, and because the windows were all boarded up, you kind of had no sense of the outside world.
We were shooting through oppressive heat in the peak of Sydney summer, some of the hottest days on record. Things were growing and festering. You weren't quite sure what was the set and what was just this derelict, weird apartment that was really creepy and very contained and insular, and the feeling that like nothing could get out.
There was something else shifting and changing the dynamic, and everyone would feel it, and it was really quite menacing. It didn't feel like it was like an acting experience and a filmmaking experience.
Observance really pushes the terror because we all internalized it. We were living it. We were sort of living this semi-nightmare